Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
I like the energy of today's guest so much that I immediately bought her book. AdaPia D'Errico is an entrepreneur with a background in finance, technology, and real estate with a long history in entrepreneurship and business development. She's an executive mentor and a powerful transformational speaker who lives what she teaches. She's passionate about empowering from the inside out, from self-mastery to serving the greater good. What she taught us in today's conversation can be summed up in the phrase, and in the title of her book, productive intuition. We talk about the intuitive nudges that can help us reach the other side of any situation. This is important resiliency advice for the health coach looking to build or grow something that feels important and meaningful. And we certainly hope that meaningfulness is a factor in your decision to enter the world of health coaching. We'd love to have you screenshot your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. Don't forget the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of Health Coach Radio can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. At Health Coach Radio, we are all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches and helping to drive this exploding industry forward. Our show is proudly brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute, an approved educational provider with the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaches. This means that our graduates can become eligible to sit for the NBHWC credentialing exam to become a board-certified health and wellness coach. Stay tuned to the very end of the show, where Laura will talk a bit more about our advanced coaching course that will deliver you to coaching mastery and satisfy the educational requirements to sit for that board exam. You can always learn more at primalhealthcoach.com/level2 as well. I really hope you take some interesting points away from today's chat. Please welcome our guest, AdaPia D'Errico.
All right, AdaPia, thank you so much for joining us today. We were talking before we started recording about kind of who you are, and Erin and I are really, really excited to kind of dive into what I think you can really lend to this discussion for health coaches and entrepreneurship. So if you don't mind, just give us a little bit of your story. You know, who is AdaPia? How did you get here? The 3 to 5 minute sort of backstory for us.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. Personally, health is a massive part of my life and taking care of my health. I have Crohn's disease, autoimmune disorder that I've been working with since I was 16. So it's just such an honor to be able to speak to people. I would say it this way: my entrepreneurial journey started in 2008. And at that time, I was like several years into a career where I wanted to be this big, important finance, like running a bank. And, you know, like I had these big aspirations. I mean, I started working in a bank when I was 18. So like I knew that financial independence is one of the most important things to feeling self-empowered, especially as a woman. I mean, I know this is not just a woman's podcast, but that's a really big piece of being able to do what I want to do. So I went into it also as a child of the 80s, thinking that like finance and wealth and like that's like really like important. What was actually driving me was a sense of meaning towards my own independence. And so here I am, 2008. At the time I was living in Europe. So I was working at a hedge fund in Switzerland. And so I kind of was like, I thought that that's what I wanted to do. Here I am, I'm in a hedge fund, and I did not like it. It was small. It was a small-ish hedge fund, but it was not, I realized I have way more of a human heart, and it just didn't fit with that world to some degree. And so I ended up leaving the fund to start a business with my sister. So this is where like there's a thread to my story, which has a lot to do with meaning and following my intuition and following my heart around what's meaningful. And I left the fund right when the Lehman crash happened, right when all of that happened, like I was in the middle of that. I stayed through that until the fund was stabilized. And then I left to start this business with my sister. And my sister's an artist. And, I didn't know anything about the art world. I didn't know anything about the consumer products world. And so basically I just picked up this thread with her because she was getting courted by merchandise companies wanting to license her art. So basically I jumped in with her, and I wanted to protect her from people trying to take advantage. I had a business degree, so I understood how to set up a legal entity. I understood the importance of accounting, and I just dove into this world, and it was the most incredible adventure to figure it out. I mean, we started with a MySpace page. This is how far back this goes, right? It was like MySpace. I'm like, you need a blog, you need a mailing list, like all the basics. And I started using social media really early because I like being on like the bleeding edge of things. So this world of working with my sister, we built a global brand. You can look her up. Her name is Camila Dorico. She's an incredible artist, made it easy. We got into the art world, into the pop culture world. So we were doing all the Comic Cons. We were like going all over the world doing, like, San Diego Comic Con was a staple every year, just like this whole crazy semi-linear entertainment industry, toys, things. I was eventually consulting for Disney and Mattel and just like all this really interesting, totally non-finance world. But in doing this, as the world was changing for creators in around 2009, 2010, Kickstarter came on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were using Kickstarter and Indiegogo to basically like raise capital for some of the projects that we wanted. And then, this is actually what led me into back into finance, back into the world that I'm in today, which is real estate investing, because I moved to Los Angeles in 2012 to kind of take up this idea of trying to do more linear entertainment with her characters and her work. And I got into the startup scene. I got into Silicon Beach. I was talking to venture capitalists. I was like, there was a lot going on that was really interesting to me. And then I discovered this thing called crowdfunding as like a legal thing. So in 2012, the Jobs Act came into being. President Obama signed the Jobs Act, which was the Jumpstart Our Businesses and Services Act, which was essentially a way to open the doors for entrepreneurs to raise investment capital from regular people. Mm-hmm. Because up until that point, like, you and I wouldn't be able to invest in Facebook pre-stock market.
Right.
And so there's this whole world of being able to invest in something and, make it big. Like Tim Ferriss is one of he invested in Twitter really early. Like, you hear these stories of people, you're like, how do I do that? And so the Jobs Act kind of made that possible. Long story short, I got into the real estate crowdfunding industry because crowdfunding to me woke up this part of me in my brain that was like, oh, hey, I can turn my sister's fans into shareholders. This makes like a whole lot of sense to me. And eventually that didn't actually happen till 2016 with laws and regulations. But in the meantime, I came into this real estate crowdfunding industry. My sister continued her business. I was in LA. I helped launch basically like a whole industry around real estate investing, the Jobs Act, crowdfunding, this whole like crazy amazing thing. And it brought me back all the way back into kind of like what I started when I was 18, like in finance and investing. And I'm really passionate about empowering people around their wealth and investing and understanding it and really like actually like talking about it. Because if we don't have an education in it, we might think, oh, I don't know how to talk about it. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. No, there's so many opportunities. And as a business owner, because I was a founder of that crowdfunding company, I was obviously a founder of my sister's business. I had other ventures in between that failed, that didn't work. And I was talking to venture capitalist startups, that whole world. It's really important to stay the course. And it's also really important, in my experience too, to understand what your tolerance level is with your financial risk. So I've been fortunate enough to always bounce back and to always find my way. I'm, like you can throw me anywhere and I will like stand back up and I will like come back, I will like come back around. So, yeah. So, I've, these days I'm in private equity. I love what I do. And I love talking to entrepreneurs to really help them understand there's like a dual aspect to what you're doing, right? It's your business, what you're really passionate about, like helping other people, being of service, and you need to serve yourself. So like wealth is a form of self-care, and getting your financial ducks in a row is how you more easily succeed through what are going to be some like ups and downs, especially as I'm sure your audience knows with the coaching.
Wow. So interesting. So you dove into the entrepreneurial space. This is going back almost 14, 15 years ago now, 2008. What I thought was really interesting about your journey is that, you kept talking about how this idea of meaning, like what's meaningful to me. And you realized early on that maybe working for a hedge fund or running a bank was not really going to be meaningful, but there was still some aspect to financial consulting that is meaningful to you. And in going through this whole big journey, you've now arrived at that. And what I think is interesting about that is that took a long time, time that was going to pass anyway. And you were pretty bold about leaving a thing that you felt maybe wasn't calling you, trying different things that were kind of out of nowhere. And I think that's an inherent boldness, a resiliency maybe that entrepreneurial people possess. Would you say that's inherent to your character, or is this something you had to work on and bring out of yourself?
Oh, it's such a great reflection. I definitely think that entrepreneurs have a boldness and a different risk tolerance.
Right.
It's something that I discovered. I guess like hearing stories about myself as a kid, I could have figured it out, but I think it was more about almost like a fearlessness around, I'm just going to try it because I'm inherently curious. And there have been times when, and I talk a lot about intuition. I wrote a book called Productive Intuition. So I talk a lot about understanding how to work with our intuition, and the times when I followed like my intuition about something, especially entrepreneurially, like it never went wrong. And there was never fear because I was like, I know it. Like intuition is like such deep knowing. I'm like, I'm good. I'm going to do this. And then the times that I didn't, where I would like question it or try to go against it or like rationally think that can't possibly be right. Like then everything just, it totally didn't work out. So inherent in me somewhere was a sense of, I'm always going to be okay. And I still know this today. I'm always going to be okay. But I had to discover that also through the failures, because you can say it until it happens to you and until you're like on your knees and thinking I'm not going to make it. And then you pull yourself up by the bootstraps. So I think that's how I learned that piece of me.
Yeah. It's interesting. So my role here at, so Erin and I work for a health coaching school. And my primary role here is as admissions director, and I'm talking to people that have a passion for health and wellness. They are doing something today. This isn't everybody, but this is kind of like a broad generalization. In some cases, they hate it. They're like, I want to leave my job yesterday. And in other cases, it's like, look, it's paying the bills here. I don't know if I've got the risk tolerance to just leave. And, but I also have this side of myself that just keeps calling me. So they've finally drum up the gumption to do a couple of Google searches and think, hey, maybe I can take this class and become a health coach. But there's still so much, there's still a lot of risk aversion here. Yeah. And, those of us coming from, I came from the financial world too. And one of the things I learned is people are not risk averse. They're loss averse. They will take a risk to avoid a loss.
Yeah.
Right. So what are we really losing here? It's this conversation about being able to, yes, weigh risks, but I'm a believer risks can be mitigated.
Yes.
Right. If done properly. So really it's wrapping your arms around the loss. What are you afraid of losing?
Yeah.
And for many people, it's that financial independence. We were talking about, and look, I agree with you. I mean, I went through a divorce, and part of the reason I pursued finance is because I was hell-bent on not being financially reliant on my ex-husband. That was super important to me and led me down a path. And to your point, I accomplished that goal. I got there. I was miserable and sick, but I got there, right? But I proved I could do that. So making a transition took me a long time because I am loss averse and I had 2 children and all these things. But I knew if I could get there, then I could find my way back kind of into something else. And this is, I think, that intuition piece that you're referring to, that in my brain, I didn't identify it that way,
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a number of years, what was intuition, I kept telling myself was just like a dream, or something that would be nice to have, but I didn't fundamentally think I would get there. So I guess my question for you is, how do you kind of identify what's really intuition and following it versus just continuing to, or maybe there's really no difference, like intuition versus what your dream really is and how to get there. What takes intuition and dream, and how do you marry those things together and come out with an outcome?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. I think when it comes to our dreams, we're talking about like our aspirations, and there's something like really deep inside. And I'll always take it into the body. Like everything, I will take it into the body. Our body is we are biologically hardwired for intuition. There's so much amazing science and research that really like shows this. We're conditioned in the Western world to be of the linear left brain, sort of like lower mind. And so we are taught, and we think that we need to think about everything, and we need to analyze and overanalyze, and like, look at like, I'm in the numbers all day. Like I'm analyzing a lot of things. But you can also make numbers say anything, and you can logic yourself to death. You can come around and you can argue every corner of everything. At a certain point, you need to make a decision. Usually you make that decision when you sit with yourself, right? Like you're something's going to say yes or no. Like, what is that piece of you that basically tells your mind to shut up either way and like do it? And so I always take it into the body. Like, what does a yes feel like in your body? And usually it's like an expansive feeling, like you feel like positivity, if you will, and everybody has a different version of it. But if you have a practice of stillness where you can actually like commune with your body and with like your, with your energetic self as well, you will get that answer. And it's not emotional, right? It's different from emotions. But intuition is deep knowing that has 0 questions attached. You're like, I know I'm going to be okay. I'm going to do this, or something inspires you and you just go for it. And you have no idea, like, why did I just do that? Like, I would never do that if I thought about it. And that's that intuition. And so as it relates to your dreams, I really believe that if we have the ability to believe or to dream something, it's because somewhere we know we can make it happen. And what we have to marry is the actions required to get there. And along with that is also the willingness to take the risks that will come. And yeah, you can mitigate risks. Of course, there's multiple ways of doing that. And sometimes you just have to dive in, and you learn by diving in that you have everything you need to make it happen. You're resourceful, you're resilient. And it all comes from a deep inner knowing. And that to me that's that transcendent intelligence. That's an intuitive knowing. And it literally has 0 questions.
I keep the phrase calculated risk taking keeps coming up for me, because, and I guess where I'm going with this is that, we talk about like the sense of boldness and tapping your intuition, which for some people who just maybe aren't super connected with what their bodies telling them, struggle with intuition. But the idea of calculated risk taking is that if I leap into something, and I hate that phrase, leap, I don't know, whatever. It's just, it bothers me because it's a little lacking nuance. But if we leap into something, there is a chance that parts of it might not work, but that risk is often worth it. But a lot of people will balk from that potential risk. So calculated risk takers are ones who can sort of zoom out, look or feel for this intuitive input. Actually, I was thinking that there's a tool that we teach for coaches. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. It's called Decisional Balance. It's not an intuitive approach, but it's basically what people will do. People who are very logical and who maybe aren't calculated risk takers and really need the data to be on paper to help them leap into a decision, they'll do a pros and cons list, which sure, very two-dimensional, but it's like the pros of doing this, of taking this leap, and the cons of taking this leap. But the decisional balance adds another dimension to it, which is the pros of not taking this leap and the cons of not taking this leap. Nobody's doing that second sort of deeper dive. Like, what if I don't? And that's where so much magic comes in. And I think even if you're not an intuitive person, even if you're not maybe in tune with your body, you can go cerebral with this and really get logical about what happens if I don't take this risk. And sometimes the outcomes of that are worse than the outcomes of making the leap.
Oh, what a great tool. Yeah, you're presenting an opportunity to look at different dimensions of your life and sort of experience, well, if I don't, then, essentially, like, it's like, how's that going to affect me and how's that going to feel in my life? Is that what I want to be, who I want to be? I love that tool because it allows us to see ourselves to put ourselves into like a sort of a state. And I was thinking when you were talking about pros and cons, I was actually thinking how a lot of those are subjective too, because a pro for me might be a con for you.
Right.
And so it just gets really nuanced, and it can get really like meta in a way, but it's really like it goes back to like the risk tolerance that we have, and the loss aversion. And I also want to point out to people too that, and I know that I experienced this a lot, where there's a lot of romanticizing about entrepreneurs and taking these big risks. And there's like narratives around these big risk reward. And so it's easy to emotionally get caught up in the idea of like, oh, it's going to be this great big thing, and I'm going to be so, successful, and I should just like jump in. But that's why I like this tool that you're talking about, because it actually grounds you into the consequence potentially. And am I comfortable with that consequence like happening? Like, just to relate it into what I do on the real estate side is like, we're looking at what are all the risks of losing money in this deal? And then how am I going to mitigate those risks? And am I comfortable with the, basically the possibility, like what's the mathematical possibility of that happening? So it's like, you're always in a field of like probability. But at some point, because the numbers can say anything.
Right.
And you're just projecting into the future anyway. So at some point you have to make a decision and know that you've got what it takes to work it out. And same thing with being like entrepreneurial. Like, I know at one point in my career, I thought that I also wanted to be a coach, not a health coach. And I thought that I had to make it work, and that because I chose this, I had to do it. And what the reality was is I didn't want to be a solopreneur. And I had to admit that to myself. And once I figured that out, once I got over this idea of who I was supposed to be and how it was supposed to happen, there's a pride element. I have like a very, very good relationship with my pride. I'm like, oh, there you are again. But it was a really important lesson for me around, oh, I want business partners. I don't want to do this alone. But all the narrative, at least in my head, what I was seeing was like solopreneur. I'm a solo this, I'm a solo that. And these days I see a lot of, I have a team, me and my team. And I see entrepreneurs actually owning themselves as like business people with help in a culture that's very much like hero worship. This person did everything by themselves, which is just not true. So anyway, it really was like, I had to jump in, fail, quote unquote, to learn what it is I really wanted and move in that direction. And I could only do that by trying something and realizing that wasn't it.
Exactly.
So do you think it's pride that, because I heard you reference this, and I think there's something to this, that there's this tremendous fear of failure. for people to take this, that holds them back from taking this a step. And for some people, it's literally paralyzing. Like they're like, I fail to see the real risk in just taking a class. One of my favorite questions when I talk to people about this kind of stuff is like, when was the last time you invested in something you were passionate about and regretted it? When was the last time? Right. And literally it's, well, never. I mean, I might not have always gotten exactly what I wanted out of it, but this is, so when kind of framed that way and thinking of it in terms of an investment, I fail to see where's the failure there, right? So then the next step is, okay, I become a health coach. Now I'm going to start a business, or I'm going to work towards being a health coach. Still a tremendous amount of fear of failure there. And I get it. Nobody likes to fail, but to your point, that's where we learn so much. And how can we take the pride out of that fear of failure? If without the pride, is the fear still there?
Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot for myself. It's such a good point, because the pride is, I'm not allowed to fail because of how I think someone's going to judge me. Mm-hmm. That for me, and I'm, have always been very independent. So one of my life learnings is to ask for help, truly, it's just not my natural, I that's just not where I go naturally. And I know this about myself. So I consciously work on it. And so for me, the pride was I've always been a successful business person. It kind of weaves into my identity. So who do I think I need to be? And the pride was I don't want anyone to think I'm not capable, and so it's always a self-reflective exercise. And so in reality, there is no fear, there's discomfort. Mm-hmm. of whatever it's not truly fear. I mean, we only have true biological fear of death and falling and loud noises. Everything else is literally just in our heads. And so I like to reframe failure as feedback, just change the rest of the words after the F, and just remind myself of that, because that's how I learned. I mean, I know it's a very overused cliche, but it took Edison 10,000 tries to get the light bulb right. And at 9,000, he's well, now I know that one doesn't work, and that one doesn't work, and that one doesn't work. And then he, and then he hit it, and he was just persistent, and he didn't think about failure as failure. So it's a lot of it is what we believe something is versus taking a more empowering reframe of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love failure as feedback is one of my favorite little sound bites I throw to my clients who fail on their diet on the weekend or something. It's no. That's the learning experience. We'll just take that and run with it. And it's so wild because health coaches, when we're practicing with our clients, we're encouraging them to take leaps of faith. We're encouraging them to try things on that feel uncomfortable. We're supporting them when they fall down, but we won't. We put those walls up and we won't do it ourselves. And I think it's just because a lot in health coaching specifically, not specifically, but in the world of coaching, which is honestly booming right now. Right. I think it's fair to say that most people who are entering the coaching world are leaving something else, and leaving something else is scary because it's, I guess, ish. So we just have this inherent nervousness. But I think when we tap into intuition, something called you to leave that thing and enter this thing, and somehow we just overanalyze that a little bit. But
yeah, we're definitely in our heads so much. It's, to me, meditation is one of my foundational practices. Just a lot of times it's either just conscious breathing, just get out of the head, get out of that space. And it comes back around, Laura, what you were saying about what's so bad about taking a course. If another reframe, right? Having the curiosity, having the humility to want to learn and just take the course. I do so much, I study so many other things, right? Because I'd be bored to tears if the only thing I ever looked at was investing stuff, just bored to tears. I'm all over the place. because it makes me a well-rounded person, and it satisfies my curiosity, and it allows me to actually be more effective in my work because I'm learning all these other things about myself. And so, health is one of those things for me because I'm very much like I self-manage my condition. And I actually came into like the whole world of like the, Primal coaching and Mark and everybody, like that was a big like piece of how I helped myself. And so I love the always being a learner and coming as an investment professional, like you are investing in yourself. Like, why not? Like, that's a really important thing to do, even if like, maybe you don't end up being a coach, but you certainly can still help people and you certainly help yourself. And getting education from people who are 100% passionate and into it. Like I would rather learn from you than from me. Like I don't presuppose to teach anybody about health. Like I want to learn from people who do it all day long. And I want to learn for myself. So even for those who might be like teetering or like, oh, I shouldn't have done this, or maybe I don't want to, like the worst that can happen is you learn something for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's never a bad thing.
Yeah. I feel like we have this conversation sometimes with coaches that are in our community who will, we go through the exercise of having them figure out who they help, who do you help and how do you help them? And so we do this by encouraging them to tell their story. What was your story that kind of brought you here? And sometimes coaches will say, well, I don't really have much of a story. Like I was never really unhealthy. I didn't really have a thing that came up. And it's like, yeah, but something brought you here. Like, what was that? It's almost like I kind of feel like this is maybe where I want to go with this question, because you mentioned earlier and started giving your origin story that, this idea of this dual aspect of wanting to serve others, being of service to others, but also serving the self. And I do feel like health coaches get into health coaching to serve others and forget about themselves, just completely forget about themselves and what moved them to this and what nudged them toward it. And then we have this whole other piece, and maybe you can speak to this too, because financial empowerment is something that's really important to you. But we have this whole other piece, this narrative that's coming in as coaching becomes more and more and more of a thing, where it's like scale to 6 figures, scale to 7 figures, be a multiple 7-figure business owner. And for some coaches, that is such a quantum leap. Like I'm at minute 1 of my business, and now you're telling me I need to scale to 7 figures. Like I don't even know how to bridge that gap. So there's just a lot of noise here that's I think threatening to cloud an entrepreneur's intuition. Like the thing that brought you here, what was that? What do you think about that? Like how do we balance this idea of serving ourselves and tune out some of the noise that we're hearing in the entrepreneurial space about like success?
Oh, it's such a huge topic. And you're right. That goes back to all these narratives about what you're supposed to be. What is success? Like success is a 7-figure business. Is it? Like, what is success to you? Like, maybe it's not. Maybe you don't want that, because what it takes to get there is just, it's not just the whole solopreneur. I'm going to be a coach and I'm going to do this by myself. Like it requires systems. It requires like financial investment. I mean, to get to 7 figures, like, yeah, there's stories about the, like, it's kind of like the one-hit wonder. I got discovered on YouTube and then I'm Justin Bieber. And it's like, that happens sometimes, but for like 99.999% of other people, it's actually a grind. And you know what I mean? And it's like, and he worked to get there too. I mean, just like, he didn't just like show up one day and didn't train. So I think we just have to like detach from the stories. And sometimes I find this dangerous with social media. Mm-hmm. Because we need to be on there as entrepreneurs, because it's part of the marketing plan. It's part of like sharing who we are and telling it as a story. And that removes us a little bit from the kernel of meaning, which oftentimes is I'm something about this speaks to me so strongly that I want to dedicate more time or my life to it. And then we're on this, these platforms where we constantly feel like we're not enough. Mm-hmm. And so we just need to remember that everyone's marketing themselves. And so I'm going to show up in my best possible way. And so to notice when we start having the doubts coming into our head, because that's not intuition. That's not your heart. That's not your soul. That's your ego and your brain, which is wired towards comparison and contrast and competition and survival. And you're not really thinking, you're actually emoting primally. And so then you have to bring it back. So what I'm trying to say is that notice the response in yourself around what a 7-figure business is. Like, is that something that scares me? What am I telling myself about that? Why can't I do that? And it's kind of like that, the pros and cons and the reverse pros and cons, like doing something like this, which really gets down to, I don't know how to do this. Okay.
And that's okay.
Okay.
That's thank God, because so I was, again, we were checking out your website, and right on your main page, it's about authority through authenticity, right? And we say to our coaches all the time, this is where you're going to be able to quiet your imposter syndrome by being authentic to who you are and what you do know. Stop trying to be all things to all people. It never works. And this is where you continue to feel insecure. What do you know? What is authentic to you? What can you help somebody with? And focus there, because that's where you can be an authority in a particular area to a particular person that you will best serve. That's kind of what I'm hearing there. Would you mind, I guess, elaborating on that for us?
Yeah. It's like, it's simple, and it's like, it feels impossible to say, especially if we have that imposter syndrome, and like we all do, I start with this. I'm an authority over myself. All right. I'm working really hard every day to stay in a place of inner validation as opposed to external validation, and to know myself, and like knowing my triggers, knowing my fears, like knowing all these kinds of things, and just working through them to really understand that I have to source everything from myself. When I learned this, when I stopped trying to be a successful business person as I thought somebody else wanted me to be, because I always say, who are they? Right? I don't know who they are. I have no idea who they are. They're in my head. And when I started to it requires a level of courage, because we grow up being externally oriented, being oriented towards, like, first of all, like our parents and teachers and et cetera. And so it's a lot of like constant work to come back in. But when you get there and you're like, actually, you know what? It starts with, I don't know, right? I actually don't know. I might not be able, like for me at least, it was like, I might not be able to help you. Here's what I do know. Here's what I know about myself. Here's my journey. Here's what I did for myself. And the more I was able to detach from how should I respond so that I appear a certain way, into that's so much work and so much energy and thought, where I'm really tired. I'm just going to answer and say, this is me. And then everything changed, and everybody changed. Like, even when I was able to like verbalize and say, like, I have always felt strongly about financial empowerment, but before I would say, no, I want to make a bunch of money, and I want the title, and I want to be successful. And there was a detachment from meaning. And the meaning was actually back here in my heart, in why this is important. And when I identified that for myself, then when I have conversations with people and I say, this was important to me because it was important to me, the response from others is, oh, wow, can you tell me more? And it wasn't me trying to do it. It was me just being really honest about who I am. And that's the authenticity piece. It's not like being the craziest version of you. Like sometimes like that comes out in social a lot. Like, oh, look at me, I'm authentic, I'm partying. Like, I mean, that's a part of who you are, but authenticity actually is very much about vulnerability.
Well, actually, that last point made me I had a visceral reaction because I think when you're getting into social media, which we have to, I mean, it's our number one marketing opportunity, whatever social media platform, floats your boat. But there is the inherent to social media marketing, this sort of flashiness, like, look at me, I'm so wacky, I'm so out there, I'm so interesting, I have this hook. And for people who are just authentically showing up as themselves, they feel like they're paling in comparison. And if I can't go out there and be this crazy, flashy social media personality, I'm not going to bother starting. I think that when I think of authenticity, the word that comes to mind is easy. Authenticity is easy. It's the easiest thing to do because it's truly an expression of self. But it's so easy to become influenced. So by people that you're seeing out there who seem to be crushing it, they seem to have this personality or this following that you'll never have, and then we lose sight of ourselves because we have this not enoughness that comes in when really we've had enough in us this whole time. So I don't know. It's such a difficult time to try to be an entrepreneur. I shouldn't say that, actually. It feels like a difficult time to be an entrepreneur who's coming from a place of authenticity because the rest of the world feels very inauthentic in some ways, a little bit.
100%.
Yeah.
But to a certain point, I think people are catching on to that.
Hopefully.
Right? A little bit. I mean, I totally get what you're saying, Erin, and I agree with you too. But I know the people that I follow that I will personally listen to are the ones that they're not full of BS.
Yeah, the zealots are kind of going away, maybe. Who knows? But I was thinking about your Justin Bieber example. It's so funny because this is kind of related, but it's sort of like I came across a gal who's probably a direct competitor of me. We work in the very same space. We even have an almost identical program. It's crazy. Like, we work with the same people in the same way. It's like, how does this even happen? How does this lightning strike twice? But it did. Anyway, she happened to get a celebrity client. So her star rose. Mm-hmm. And I decided that that's what my next business move needed to be. I need to get a celebrity client. Like, nothing is going to happen for me until I get a celebrity client. And I literally put the brakes on. I was like, I'm not going to do anything until I get a celebrity client. I even had a specific celebrity client in mind, and she followed me on Instagram, and I was like, here we go. It's happening. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get the celebrity client. And then I just sat around waiting for this celebrity client to email me and did nothing, expecting that I was going to get lucky, win the lottery, and shoot into this trajectory. But that's not why I got into this line of work. I didn't get into this line of work to have 1 million followers and a celebrity client. I completely forgot that. It was so easy. It was crazy how easy that switch flipped for me, where it's like, I want to go viral. I need to have this follow, like, completely wild. It's pretty hair trigger at this point. I just feel we're really influenced by influencers, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. First of all, thank you for sharing that, because that's not something I think a lot of people would like say that you had that. And that's like a really important thing for you, because you recognized it. And so you could like come back to yourself. You come back to like, what's meaningful to me? Like, what are my values? Like, that's that whole, like, as you say, like, being authentic is easy because you're not trying anything, right. And then maybe what it is you can take the energy that would otherwise go there and say, well, I'm going to do tactical things with it. Like sending the email or doing whatever, like spending more time in the tactical and, and less time in the trying to appear as, because the tactical is what'll actually get you there. You know what I mean? Like the tactical, like if you don't actually take action, you won't get there, which is why I think there's this big disconnect, when that movie, The Secret, came out and everyone was like, oh, I can just think about it and it'll happen. Like, no, you still have to do something.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I mean, I guess I want to bring this around to ask a really maybe a hard question, which is, we love talking about this stuff. We love talking about authenticity. We even love talking about manifesting, your destiny. How does this translate? How do we hook this up with and making a living? Yeah. Like, how do we hook it up with the financial empowerment piece?
No, totally. Yeah, totally. And that's the tactical piece. So I think it comes down to a couple practical things about time management, right? With the social, especially like allocating. I live by my calendar. Like I have things in my calendar that are like immovable, like my workouts, my, certain things. I'm like my meditation, like you cannot get a hold of me. So first me and what I need to be centered and to be successful and to feel good, because number one, without my health, I have nothing, nothing. Number two, my mental health. So the space and the time for that, and mental health weaves into the social media stuff. So bucketing time for that. And you go in with your list. I am only doing these things during this time on social media, because it's so easy to go into these like weird little rabbit holes. And then 3 hours later, you're like, what have I been doing? What could I have been doing for those 3 hours? So, and then it allows you to like pull back your mind. And then you have like your tactical things to do, because fundamentally the social media is important, but you're going to also get clients in many other ways. Like a lot of people get clients mostly through word of mouth, and like having these like authentic conversations, like here's who I am, because I want to relate to a real person. I don't want to relate to a performer of sorts. Like I just like, I don't, so I think practically, if we take a step back and approach it from a business perspective, it's also, what do I need financially to have the stability or the current, start with current, if you're starting out, like my current like lifestyle, what's my budget? What do I need to do this? Because I think where a lot of people don't go because we're scared to go there is to actually look at how much I spent on my credit card. So, like look at my bills we don't want to look at it. It's okay. It's like, I totally get, there's months I don't want to look at my credit card bill either, but I reconcile it and I have to, so that I'm like, oh crap, it's like calories, right? I'm like, oh damn, I really ate that much today. Because if I don't, I'm like, tell myself little lies. So anyway, same thing with finances, understanding what you need to feel comfortable, especially for those who might not have a nest egg. So that's a really important piece of it, because when you feel like you're solid with your finances, then it's easier to take the risk, because it actually doesn't feel like a risk. It feels like I have to invest X amount of time or X amount of money for a perceived return. In business, we invest in things all the time that don't have a return. It's R&D. So, but you have to start from that, I think, from that base. So knowing what you need to live, knowing how you want to live. So it's like a double layer. You have like a base layer, and then you have like another layer. And then also from a business perspective, how much money do I need to invest to get to over here? And then choosing the actions. And if you need to spend money, but a lot of it's going to be like action driven, is I'm going to do this. What's my expected return? And it gets really, tactical, and it gets very grounded, and it gets very like analytical. Like I have to do this. I'm going to do this. Did I get the results that I wanted? And the consistency. Like you have to be consistent in everything you do. You have like one conversation with somebody and they're just like not interested. If you give up, you're truly like, that's never going to work. Like you have to over and over and over again. So the more you can make a system out of that and remove emotions, remove like taking things personally, like just remove all of it and think about it as like trial and error. Then you can more easily back into the financial part of it. And so that's where I would start from a financial perspective is there.
Yeah. Laura talks about that a lot.
We talk about that a lot, about knowing your number, because I came from a lifestyle I didn't want, that actually cost a heck of a lot more than the life I did want.
Yeah. So
I was in, I have, as much as I love Mark Sisson, I don't want his life. I don't want to build an empire. I don't want that. I want Aaron talks about this too. I want time. I want the gift of time to do the things I enjoy doing. I don't want to spend my life constantly working, so that my life is about working. But the thing is part of the reason I chose this path and away from finance is because what I do for a living now doesn't feel like work. There's aspects of it that I might not really enjoy doing. But at the end of the day, having conversations with my health coaching clients about literally transforming their lives, or to people that are interested in becoming a health coach, guess what they're looking to do? Literally transforming their lives. I love this whole conversation and it lights me up. That part doesn't feel like work, right? But again, it's got to be, we were talking with, I think it was Michelle Leota, who does some kind of business coaching. She says, what you really have to do is find what it is you're passionate about, what problem you're solving, but it's got to be something people are willing to pay for. This is where it comes into that financial empowerment is part of your self-care. And you've got to sort of let go of that feeling, what's the word I'm looking for? People feel guilty for charging what they need to charge to live that lifestyle. And we've talked to multiple people who have all said, the more money you make, the more people you can help. That's where the disconnect comes down to.
Wow. Oh, I don't see that correlation at all.
meaning not necessarily gouging people, but not feeling guilty for being financially successful, because the more financially independent you are, the more you can do, right? The more activities and things you can do that might not necessarily make you money, right? Because you're financially independent on the base of the business base that you've built.
Oh, got it. I thought about it I was thinking about it in a completely different way. So yes. Yeah, you have to you have to believe in yourself and know your value. It's kind of all the whole like love and self-love. Like you have to love yourself. You can't expect somebody else to love you if you don't love yourself. And so the value you place on yourself is one of the most important things, because money is a reflection of value. That's how our culture works. And so there's truth to how people perceive value through the price that you put on it. And so, yeah, if you don't value yourself, you're not going to find clients who value you either, or that value themselves. Because what if there's so many apps out there. I've seen them I'll use this example again, like calorie counting apps or whatever. And I get the little Instagram ads. And if it's like $20, right? Okay, I'll pay $20. Do I ever use it? No. I know that about myself, so I don't do it. And so there is a perceived value. If I have to make an investment in myself, I'm going to show up. If I'm just going to like mindlessly throw $20 at something, I'm not going to show up for it. And that does translate into ourselves too. It doesn't mean you gouge people. Absolutely not. And it might feel comfortable for you to start with a lower price point because that's where you're starting. And as long as you know that about yourself and you're saying, I'm going to start here, and that's comfortable for me to start here, and I feel it's good for me in my value, like you're not devaluing yourself. Totally good. It's not the number that matters. It's how you feel about the number that you're giving that matters.
It's a great distinction. I really agree with that. Because you're right. There are a lot of, especially in the influencer crowd, that are selling things for a relatively, they're just looking for volume, I guess. They can charge a lower price point, and they're selling a lot of stuff. But who did you really help, and why are you in this to begin with?
Yeah.
Right.
I was thinking about some business advice I received one time. I had somebody audit my business and say, "This is a great program you have. When somebody signs up for this program, do you have a little inexpensive sort of downsell add-on thing that you could at the checkout say, hey, why don't you add this to your shopping cart?" And I was like, no. And they're like, oh no, like a little $29 meal plan or $15 workout plan. It's like, no, I'm not offering cheap little meal plans and workout plans. Like that's out of integrity. First of all, it's inauthentic. I don't want to have people just throwing cheap things in their shopping cart that, maybe over time will satisfy my bottom line. It felt out of integrity. So I think there's an integrity piece to value as well. Ask for what you're worth. There's, consumers look for value in certain ways, but also like your integrity is part of your value statement, truly.
Yeah. I love that you brought up integrity. It's foundational. It's foundational to everything. And I think it's how you align to other people as well, because you want clients that have their own sense of integrity, really. I mean, you're going to attract what you are, which is why I personally believe I'm always like working through my own crap because I want to like clear all that out so that I'm attracting more of what is more aligned to who I am. And honestly, like that's a big piece. Like we talk about work, like we can talk about the financial stuff. We talk about all this. A big piece of that authenticity and that integrity is like going in and doing like your inner work. And like entrepreneurs of any kind are in their stuff all day long. I mean, like the way we relate to other people, the way we relate to money, the way we relate to businesses, like all of it, it's a constant, like, we're learning about ourselves all the time. And for me, like when I broke away from this thinking about who I was supposed to be as this, like, you know, at that point in my life, I was the COO of a fintech firm. And so I had the title, I had like, you know, all this, whatever, wasn't aligned to who I was. And I had to pursue, you know, like I said, this sort of like what I thought was a path of coaching, because I didn't have any options in my head. Like, well, what else am I going to do? And I wanted to be of service. That was it. I'm like, I want to be of service. I'm going to do this. And it ultimately led me back around to I'm of service in what I do today, where I am today with like the best possible business partners I could have like imagined. Because we have aligned values and we have like aligned integrity. And so our clients and like our investors are aligned to that because they know we're going to do right by them, because we're not doing, you know, all kinds of like same. The whole thing about like the downsell with the like that there's all kinds of marketing mechanisms that are meant for numbers and masses. And that's fine if you can run that kind of business and you have the infrastructure to do so and the money to do so, because that's how that works. It's a system. But to get the really clients that you want is to be in your integrity, to like be so authentic, to say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go against the common narrative and I'm going to stick to me. And you're going to find clients that are going to be so appreciative, like, oh yeah, she didn't have that weird little like down Sal. She feels like my kind of person. Because I think sometimes we forget that we only need a few.
Right. And we don't have to do things the way that the successful people are doing it. So the person who made the suggestion to me has a massive email list. And so feasibly, this person could sell, you know, in one day, $229 meal plans or $529 meal plans, and, you know, put a cool 10 grand in the bank. I don't have that following and frankly don't want it. So that is in integrity for that person. And it simply isn't for me. But it can be very easy to be swayed by what you're seeing. This goes back to the influence of social media and the multiple six figures and all this stuff, which I bring it up again because I do think is what new entrepreneurs are up against. Yeah. New entrepreneurs are up against the flashiness of established entrepreneurs and thinking I need to do it that way, even though it won't work the same way, right? Because and it's not in integrity.
Right. I mean, there's probably some value in offering a lower price point on something that gives a client a glimpse of who you really are, right? Rather than some random meal plan, you know, but something that provides value that allows them to pre-experience what working for you with you is going to feel like. And you don't always have to actually, but again, this is what an opt-in's for, right? Or like something that you give away for free to create value for somebody. So then the question is would that, whatever it is you're giving away for free, be more valuable if there is at least some small price tag to it? So it kind of pays for itself. You earn a little bit of money. It creates a tag of value to somebody else, but it needs to be in alignment and in integrity and authentic to what your overall business purpose is, right? To who you are as a person of service but also and as a professional.
Yeah.
But I mean, we see this stuff all the time on, I don't know. I see it with a lot of just product, people that get sucked into offering product or repping product as an additional revenue stream, that may or may not be kind of authentic to what they're doing. Sometimes it is. Sometimes if it's something that you'd recommend anyway, like you'd personally use it, I totally get that. But, and I do see folks that within our coaching community that are part of companies like Beauty Counter, for example, where it's a multi-level marketing type company or direct to consumer marketing company. But these are products that they believe in. And these are products that they use themselves and things of that nature. And if it makes transitioning out of one career to another easier to handle, and we have seen some people want to go into coaching though and get completely sidetracked by it. It becomes their full-time job now. I'm curious how many of those people are perfectly happy. Look, I stumbled into this and I just sort of pivoted and now this is what I do. I thought I wanted to be a coach. Right. Turns out I'm really good at this. Yeah. And how many of them just kind of got sucked into it and got kind of taken away from what it is they really want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like this constant, like, am I in alignment with why I was doing this? Like, it's a constant reflection. It's so easy to get distracted. We get distracted by like a million different things, and it's okay. Like even like trying things, it's like, oh, okay, I'll try this. Let's see. Nah, not my thing. No, not for me. Oh, this lands. Like this works for me. I believe in this. And I think it does come back too, because maybe we get sidetracked because I need to pay the bills. Yeah. And then that comes back into from, having the understanding financially of what's going to make sense for me, because that is going to be the number one thing that takes us away from the purpose in the first place, is that we're like, oh man, but I need to survive. And then you end up going down these paths that are mostly about the money. And and then coming back around and having like that financial base, like knowing what I need, like knowing what I want. And I'm a minimalist too. Like I don't need a lot of stuff, and I don't want it. And I'm grateful to myself for being that way, because it's like, and we can also get caught up in spending money on appearing a certain way. This is like one of the number one things that I find with working with some investors who they're like, oh, but I can't invest because I have to spend it, especially entrepreneurs. I have to look a certain way. I have to show up in certain places. And then all of a sudden, all this money is going over here. And then you're earning to maintain this identity out here. And then you can't invest, which in my world is like, you want your money to work for you. Right. So we have to be really careful of like, why do I need all that money? Right. We go back into the multiple seven figures. And what am I spending it on? What do I really need? Because what makes you truly, truly happy and content and fulfilled? Right. Like finding yourself there. That's that work of authenticity, and not being afraid that other people will suddenly judge you because you don't feel like you need to spend all the money on the thing that makes you look a certain way. And so it's discernment. It's a lot of discernment, and it's constantly coming back to, why am I doing this? Is it aligned to my meaning? Like, am I in service to others? Am I in service to myself?
Yeah, that's sort of that trap of when then, like, if I have this designer laptop bag, then I can really truly be an entrepreneur. It's so funny how we get into these traps of like sort of pressing pause on what we want to do and be, and put the emphasis on how we want to be perceived a little bit. And it's such a big trap. I get the sense that you personally work through a lot of this yourself through your meditation practice and a strong mindfulness practice. I'm just picking that up from you, that you've been really intentional about your inner work. And I also think that's a part that, we talked about this a second ago, sitting down and looking financially at what you actually need, and but even not financially, just, spiritually, what do you actually need?
Yeah.
It goes back to this question we had, I think it was a life coach we interviewed on the show who posed, I think I brought this up actually weeks ago. She posed the question, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a really hard question to answer. And if somebody just asked you off the cuff, what do you want? You might say, oh, I don't know. I'd like to have a beach house in Belize. No, I'd like to have this and I wouldn't mind having that. But that's not the spirit behind the question. The question, do you want to like, and you have to go deep and do this work. And I just feel like the more I hear folks like yourself talking, the more the more and more important it seems to have maybe a meditation practice or some kind of internal conversation practice.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. An internal conversation practice. Yeah, it is. It's a contemplative practice for me. I'm always self-reflecting. I'm always trying to purify my intentions. And yes, it's a lot of work. I like babysit my ego a lot, but I have a lot to let go of, because for me, when I think about what I want and what I think success is, it's time and it's space to be able to not feel like I'm trapped in this never ending wheel of doing. I'm a human being. I'm not a human doing. Right. And so I'm like, I'm undoing all of this conditioning, and I'm trying always to stay anchored to who I am. That doesn't mean that I don't like do things and like work. I mean, I work, but I've been able through this practice of discernment within myself to let go energetically of people, of ideas, and of just even material things that really don't serve my sense of success. Like to me, success is that I'm always in gratitude, and I'm always just feel like I'm just so grateful for being alive, for life. And if I can relay like a really quick story, back in November, end of November, so December 2020, I had a flare of my Crohn's for the first time in over 20 years. Oh. Like I was healthy. Like the irony was that in the summer previously, I was on like a different, like, I think it was like a food podcast. And I was like, oh, this is how I cured myself of Crohn's. Well, you don't, because it's autoimmune. And like, so anyway, I got so sick so fast. So to put it in context, like I was close to 100 pounds within 3 weeks. Wow. And like my regular is probably 125. The inflammation was so intense that I thought maybe I was researching lupus. I'm like, because I couldn't move my upper body. Like I literally couldn't even get out of bed. Like the inflammation moved out of my intestine into like my arms, like my hands were like crunched like claws all the time. Like I couldn't lift a glass of water. And I'm like a athletic, strong, my identity as a body was very different than this. And I'd been healthy for so long. And my body couldn't regulate temperature. It was the winter. So I would go to bed at night and I would sweat through like 5 towels. I'd be freezing. It was miserable. And Crohn's. So like all the bathroom stuff and just pain. I would pass out daily. I just would sleep because of the pain. And I had so much, in a way, like space and time, because I had not very much energy other than just to survive. Like I would eat a banana and rice. Like that's literally like all my body would want to eat. And I had, and I could hear the thoughts. Like, your business partners are going to abandon you because you're not working. Why would your husband want to stay with you? You can't even like move. You can't even make food. Like, and I would watch all these thoughts come through. Right. And then I would sit with my body, and I would sit with this pain, and I would just sit with it because there was really nothing else I could do. And I didn't have a lot of life force. It was just and so my head wasn't all over the place. It was the most profound almost like a centering practice. Mm-hmm. And I realized who I really am. I am not my body. Mm-hmm. And I'm not all these like thoughts that were going around. Like I could only survive. And I learned a massive lesson about how supported I am and how little I need to do to be still loved. like I felt so much gratitude and so much like support from people would call me out of the blue. Like they would send me like, you know, whatever remedies they would try to help. And all these people were just like, they were just like, we love you. We want you to be okay. And here I'm sitting in my old world of like, I'm so independent. I don't need anybody. And it was like, it was this like crunching of like my whole life, like compressing in on myself to only realize like I can only survive right now.
Mm-hmm.
So what's really important? I could literally like, I can only survive. And as much as my mind was like, well, you're going to have to work eventually. Like, you know, like the practical me is like, you're going to have to like figure something out. But in reality, what it brought me to is what's really, really important. And I had like a V-shaped recovery that is almost miraculous. Like I came out of a colonoscopy and the doctor was like white. She's like, I've never seen an intestine so bad. And you better be prepared because we're probably going to have to cut it out.
Oh boy.
Right? Like the whole thing. And I had to sit with that for like a day and a night. And I woke up the next morning and I heard a voice because I thought I should strip the bed. Now I had been unable to do anything, like zero, for a really long time. And I heard this voice. It was like, no, you're weak. You can't, don't do that. You can't do that. And pretty much in my world, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. And I hear this voice and I stop and I turn around and I was like, nope, I'm not going to be sick and weak. And I swear to God, I pulled the universe into me and I made a decision and I was like, no. And I stripped the bed, took me like 10 minutes with my little claws, I stripped the bed. It was really hard, like the fitted sheets in the corner. I mean, I'm telling you, I was like, this is insane. And I like take this little bundle of sheets, which felt like a ton of bricks to me. My like skeleton, like walking these sheets down to the washer. And from that day forward, like my husband saw me, he's like, you look different. Like, and this is before I was on any medication at all, before they even had a chance to give me medicine. I just started like, I was a little hungrier. I had color in my cheeks. And I learned so much going through this process because then I recovered so quickly that my doctor, she said, I don't know what you are. And I thought I'm blessed and I understand what's important. And so everything I do, whether it's my work, whether it's like whatever, it's like, I don't allow myself to get caught up in the superfluous because I know what really matters and the very few things I need to do to ensure that what's meaningful to me, I'm moving it forward, whether it's my marriage, my business, my being of service by sharing my story and sharing, what I've been through to inspire other people, my wisdom, whatever you want to call it. Those are the things that are important to me, and my body, taking care of my body, obviously. So all of this, Erin, you brought up like the internal dialogue. That's why it's so important. You don't need to go through what I went through to have that sense of take action on the things that push forward what's meaningful to you. Everything else doesn't matter. And that's been my experience.
Mm-hmm. It's a power move.
Absolutely. So, I mean, so you're in service now, you're still in investing, you're in finance, real estate investing, right? But you've written a book, there's a podcast, right? So there's a lot that you offer outside of all this that are just, is it lessons you've learned that you've written in book form? Tell us a little bit about kind of your website, the book that you wrote, and how you're trying to share all this with others.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, the book, it's funny, the book was launching when I got sick too. That was like this whole thing. So I realized like when I thought I wanted to be a coach, I was really seeking to make an impact on more people's lives. And the book was the lessons that I learned about finding myself and being of service in whatever I choose to do. So kind of like coming back into my financial career, and I serve a lot of people because I'm helping them with, creating what I consider a financial foundation that's really important, and sharing my knowledge. And the book is really aimed at helping people find that inner authority, and like anchoring to their authenticity and trusting themselves, like trusting their intuition, trusting their bodies. And I don't have like this big, and I had to work through what I thought being a successful author meant. Right. All those ideas. So all this stuff we're talking about, like, it's not that far away from me of thinking like all the marketing I had to do for it and what it would mean to be successful. And I had to have a huge reframe around that. And so I do this in a way I'm just compelled, I'm called, and I feel really fortunate that I can create the space in my day and time in the business that I have to do this without needing to make a business out of it. And for me, I feel very grateful for that, because my work pays my bills. And this is something that I don't have to attach anything else to. And that's how I can show up more authentically. I'm super happy if people want to buy my book. And, my podcast is Real Wealth, Real Health. So we talk about building a financial foundation and using real estate. And it's a little more technical, but I think it's important. And I want people to know that no matter what you're doing, that's like foundational. And that's my way of being of service and decoupling from, needing to make money off of it, because for me, that led me in a direction that didn't feel good and was totally not aligned for me. And I learned that by, again, trying to go in that direction. I was like, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel right. Coming back to center and saying, okay, this is what it is. So the book is Productive Intuition. There's a website, productiveintuition.com. And then my website, adapiaderico.com, is where people can find me. I guess LinkedIn is where I show up the most. And so, yeah, I mean, my hope really is that anyone listening can take even just like one thing away and feel like, I got this, I can do this. Because I can promise you, like, we all have what it takes inside to get exactly what it is we most dream of, what our heart is most called to. A lot of it is getting the mind out of the way.
Absolutely. The mind can screw it all up. Oh my gosh. I just love all of that. And there's, I think the resounding message here that I hope everybody takes away is really understanding what's meaningful to you. And at the end of the day, what's really important, because you're so right. I have so many colleagues from back in my finance days. I think I said this on another podcast, that were like, when they found out I was leaving they literally called to congratulate me that I got out,
Yeah.
Because I was what was called a wholesaler. I worked for an asset management company, and I would travel around my little territory and worked directly with the financial advisor. That was my role. And I don't know too many people that are in that role for anything other than the money, so a little bit different there, I think. And if there's not meaning there, if the only meaning is money, one of the things I learned is there's lots of ways to make money.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that. And there's a way that you can do it in a way that's meaningful. And I love that you have found a way to take that. You have a true interest in things that are financial, and you enjoy it, and you find empowerment in it, and you can build a phenomenal career doing it and be authentic to everything that you're doing, but also help others and be of service by helping them find their way, I guess, right? And their meaning and their integrity. So I just love it. So I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'll just throw this in for people who might not know real estate investing. Like, money changes the world if it's in the right hands. So when we invest in the buildings that we invest in senior housing, we invest in affordable housing, like, we're changing people's lives. And so there's a lot that goes into that. And when I started seeing my industry from the perspective of where are people serving a purpose and finding meaning, all I do is meet people that are in that role. Like, I don't meet slumlords. They don't come anywhere near me, because that's not who I'm looking for. And we're making improvements and we're doing this. And so I had to do a lot of like mental, like, cleansing around, and yeah, first of all, there's so much money in the world. So much. There's plenty of ways to make money, like truly. And so if that's the case, then it should be pretty easy to decide, what am I going to do that's meaningful, that advances my service? Because that's what we actually all want, is to be fulfilled and satisfied and happy and at peace and have time and space. Like that's truly what we all want. Like all the wealthiest people that I know, when I ask them to define wealth, they talk about family, they talk about time, they talk about their health, they talk about, they all have philanthropic endeavors. Like that is inspiring to me. And so, yeah, there's so much goodness in the world when we have eyes for it. And, so I guess that's always my true north. And, yeah, so I just really appreciate you having me on and like talking about all this, like, all this stuff. And yeah, I really hope that people will find that in themselves. That's your inner authority, and that's your authenticity, and that's your meaning. And I'd love to see more and more people out there doing this, because we need you in your purpose. We need you in your purpose.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.
Well, if you've been listening at Health Coach Radio, you'll know that we're all about raising the voices of practicing health, fitness, and nutrition coaches, but most importantly, helping to further legitimize this exploding industry. Erin and I have disclosed often that we're on the faculty of the Primal Health Coach Institute, founded by none other than the health and wellness legend Mark Sisson. And we've interviewed dozens of guests from just about every different health coaching program you can think of, and who practice in just about any conceivable way you can think of. But our allegiance is to the health coaching industry in its totality, first and foremost. It's our desire to continuously and unapologetically lift and promote this industry that nudged us to create this podcast for you in the first place. It's this same yearning that encouraged us to take the educational offering at our health coaching school to the next level. We are so proud to offer the Primal Health Coach Level 2 certification course, which, when combined with our primary course, the Primal Health Coach certification course, not only satisfies the educational requirements to sit for the board exam, but is specifically designed to teach advanced coaching mastery. You will work closely with a small class of peers through this 12-week, very intensive, live online classroom experience to learn how to execute a coaching relationship that is truly transformational. You'll learn and practice how to ask powerful questions, what it means to hold space for your clients, but most importantly, how to actually do it. You'll learn about the craft of motivational interviewing and the nuances of habit change, goal setting, and accountability, and how to nurture your client's own inner knowing, their intuition, and their own self-efficacy, so that they will graduate from your care a truly transformed person. You want a big, successful, powerful coaching practice. And maybe you're devouring our episodes looking for the silver bullet that's going to launch your business into the upper echelons. We've said it a million times and we'll say it again. Your coaching skills are what will make or break you and set you apart for success in this field. So if you're looking to level up your coaching skills, and maybe dial up your credential and become a board-eligible health coach, look no further. You can learn more about PHCI's Level 2 program at primalhealthcoach.com/level 2. But if you would value talking to a real person about your path to being a masterful coach and perhaps a board-certified coach, book some time with me personally. You can access my calendar at primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or just call me. You can reach me at 307-7662. Thank you for listening to Health Coach Radio, and I hope I get to talk to you soon.